So I always tell my students that econometrics is an extremely easy subject, and not only is it an easy subject, it's also a very scoring subject. So it's almost like math. If you make sure to avoid some silly mistakes, you can actually get full marks, as long as you make sure that you don't make the silly mistakes which I'm going to talk about in this video. By the way, I have these notes with me, so in case you have been sleeping throughout the semester and have not made your own notes, you can let me know in the comment section below, and I'm going to share a link with you.
Students forget about one or more of these 10 points, and then they keep wondering why they have lost some marks in the exam.
So let's say you're given a regression equation like this one. How are you going to go about interpreting it? You have to make sure that you include these 10 points while you are interpreting any regression equation, and this checklist is going to help you to remember all of these 10 points. So I have come up with this mnemonic which you can use to memorize these 10 points in less than 1 minute. And in exam situations, when we are under pressure and under time constraints, we cannot recall what exactly we had to write in the answer. This mnemonic is going to help you to quickly recall the 10 points which you have to include in your answer to make sure that you get the maximum possible marks whenever you are asked to interpret a regression equation. So before we move on, let me quickly tell you the mnemonic is CAPSIUMLID. So basically it says CAP cap, SIUM CAPSIUM, LID lid, and C stands for CP, and we all know that CP means ceteris paribus, which means keeping all other things equal, and A stands for two words. So A stands for on average, about. Just remember that there are two words, okay? We're going to see what this means. P stands for p-value, I stands for intercept, and S stands for sign, and U stands for units, M stands for magnitude, L stands for literal, I stands for implies, and D stands for dummy. So now I'm going to quickly tell you what exactly each of these means and how you can incorporate these 10 points in your answer to make sure that you don't make the silly mistakes. Okay, so let's say you are required to interpret a regression equation such as this one. Now, the first thing to remember is to quickly jot down this mnemonic even on your answer sheet. So it's going to help you to make sure that you don't forget any of the 10 points which we have to include in our interpretation. So wage hat I is equal to minus 2.1 minus 3.2 FE. FE stands for female, that is the dummy variable, plus 1.4 ED. ED stands for education, and the last term is plus 0.2 EXP, and EXP stands for experience. Whenever students are interpreting a regression equation, the first mistake that students make is that they only interpret the given equation in a very literal or mechanical way. So, for example, when education increases by 1 year, wage increases by, let's say, $1.4. Now, this is a very literal or a mechanical interpretation. Why? Because it does not actually tell us what this implies. So, if you want to gain the maximum possible marks, you should not stop here. So obviously, giving the literal interpretation or the mechanical interpretation is extremely important, but you have to go further and go on to explain that the relationship between wage and education is positive, and this indicates that the more educated a person is, the higher he or she will be paid. In short, what this implies is, and that is what the I stands for, because we just interpreted this literally. So we are done with the L, and now we have covered the I part as well, because what we are doing over here is that after we have interpreted this portion literally, we are also going to explain what that specific interpretation implies or what it indicates. And in this given situation where we see that the relationship between wage and education is positive, and we just mentioned already, the more educated a person is, the more highly paid he or she will be. So this in short implies that if you learn more, you are probably going to earn more. So we are done with the L and the I. Now coming back to the next I, which is right here. So remember, the other I stands for intercept. Now intercept term is negative. So once again, you have to remember to make sure that you interpret this both literally as well as you explain what it implies. Now, as far as the literal interpretation is concerned, we all know that a negative intercept does not really mean anything, right? But the mistake that students always make, that they completely ignore the intercept and don't comment on it at all. So you don't have to make this mistake. Just make sure to write very briefly that this value refers to the hourly wage rate for a male worker. Why did I say male worker? Because you can see that there is a dummy variable in the equation, that is, we have the female dummy. So when this becomes 0, this is going to represent only the hourly wage rate for a male worker. Okay, so that covers the next I. Now,
Okay, so we are done with 3 points, that is the literal interpretation, what it implies, and a very brief comment on the intercept. Now when you comment on the other coefficients, for example the education, experience and female dummy coefficients, you just have to remember to include the key words which I have underlined. So this is the given regression equation which we are trying to interpret. And this is the checklist which you can use as a quick reminder. Okay, so for the education coefficient, we state that for every additional year of schooling, the average hourly wage goes up by about $1.4, ceteris paribus, that is keeping all other things equal. Now notice that I have used the words average and about because these are the keywords which you should not forget. And the same keywords have to be included in the comment on the experience coefficient. As far as the interpretation of the dummy coefficient is concerned, you also need to remember some additional words such as lower or higher depending on the reference category which you are comparing with. So in our situation, we can see that the average hourly salary of a female worker is lower by about $3.2 as compared to the average salary of a male worker, which is the reference category, keeping all other things equal. Now notice that we have to be very careful about the units. So wage over here is being measured in dollars, but you must read the information given in the question very carefully to check whether it's given in pounds or rupees. Another thing to notice is that education and experience are being measured in terms of years. So we're almost done. We've checked whether the equation includes a dummy coefficient and we commented on that. We've also taken care of the units and we have made sure to comment on the sign as well as the magnitude of the coefficients. We have taken care to include the keywords such as average, about, ceteris paribus. And finally, depending on how much information you're given in the regression output, you must remember to comment on not just the joint but also the individual impact in the case of a multiple regression model. And other than the t-stats and the f-stats, do not forget to comment on the p-values, that is whether they're statistically significant or not. And most importantly, do not forget to comment on the r-square value, literally as well as what it implies, if that is given to you in the question. So in the mnemonic, I only included the letter P, but basically that includes commenting on the t-stats and the f-stats and the r-squared value and so on. And now it's time for you to practice. So the mnemonic itself is pretty easy to remember, that is CAPSIUMLID, but you have to obviously remember what each of the letters stands for. So just pick any regression equation from your textbook and start practicing. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video useful and do let me know in the comment section below how your exam goes.